Now it's time for Everyday Apologetics, where we talk about common questions that Christians might have. We're joined today by Dr. Leslie Wickman. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited. When we were reading your bio, I know I was just fascinated by all that you've done in your life. I'm going to read through some of these. Let's see, you're a respected research scientist, you're an engineering consult, an author, inspirational speaker. You've also been a competitive athlete. My goodness. Let's see, you've played volleyball and women's professional tackle football. You have been in so many male-dominated fields. What has that been like? What has your experience been like being a woman in male-dominated fields?
Well, I have to say that there's still a lot of male dominance. I don't really like the word chauvinism, but certainly male dominance across a variety of arenas. Certainly within science and faith, those are two very heavily dominated areas, and when you bring them together, maybe all the more so.
Right.
So in fact, one researcher that I read not too long ago was writing about kind of the career space of science and religion, and they actually referred to it for women as the double glass ceiling.
Oh, interesting.
So
yeah.
There's been kind of a traditional glass ceiling for women in STEM, and there has also been a glass ceiling in the church for women in religion or religious positions.
Right.
And so you put those together, and it's kind of like if one glass ceiling doesn't get you, the other one might very well.
Right.
And so it's very hard for women to make a career out of bringing science and faith or science and religion together.
Right. Well, you've certainly done that, and really the purpose of this conversation is to encourage women as they're watching or listening, encourage them to step into these fields of science and faith, especially as we're thinking now of this Thanksgiving season, and we're thinking about encouraging one another, being thankful, giving gratitude. So I'm giving you gratitude for the work that you've done.
Thank you so much.
And I hope that it would just be inspiring for others. So when we think about the field of science, what were some specific challenges maybe that that you faced as you were growing in your work in science?
Right. So actually, for me, the first challenge that I encountered was fairly early on. I grew up in a Christian family, came to faith at an early age. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a nutritionist. So really STEM was part of our lives.
Yeah.
My dad had a telescope growing up, and so he would take the telescope out in the backyard, and we'd look at the stars and the moon and planets from an early age, and always with the understanding that God was the source behind all of this that we were studying. And yet when I got into junior high school, I encountered my first atheist biology teacher who would say, you might as well leave your faith at the door, because what we're going to talk about in biology class will almost certainly contradict anything that you've learned at church or Sunday school. And here I am, 12 years old in junior high, and I'm like, what do I do with that,
Right.
So that was kind of my first kind of like, not everybody thinks about this the way I do. And I look back on that as kind of a really challenging time, because I just didn't know what to do with it. There was this kind of cognitive dissonance, and but at the same time, well, not at that moment in time, but years later, I can look back on that and be grateful that that I encountered that at the age that I did, because it set me on the path from the time I was preteen to kind of figure out how science and faith fit together. And so I've been at this for a very long time now.
I love that. And I think absolutely that's the silver lining. I mean, what a difficult thing to face at 12 years old, but you pushed through and you're still continuing to explore science and faith in that relationship. What are some things that really kept you motivated? Because it's not only, again, within science, but also within being a Christian in a secular environment. How did you stay encouraged, and how would you encourage others?
Yeah. Well, it was a real sense of calling, in fact, and I just felt like this is what God had designed me to do, and that's how He'd prepared me. And in my teaching career in academia, students would often ask me, how have you kind of navigated your career and had the experiences and opportunities that you had? And so it forced me to kind of think more seriously about, what had been my story, and so for me, it started actually when I was, only 9 years old probably. I went to a Bible camp in Washington State, and there were missionaries speaking at this Bible camp, and I, night after night, would go back to my cabin and cry myself to sleep because I had such a strong impression that God was calling me to a faraway mission field. And here I am, 9 years old, and it just sounded scary, and I didn't want to leave home and go overseas and, become a missionary. And after several nights of that, I fully surrendered, and I just said, okay, Lord, whatever you want, your will be done. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I was overcome with this amazing sense of peace, just peace that passes understanding, and I was, from that time on, I was like, okay, I'm going to do whatever God calls me to. And that's exactly how I've lived my life all these years, is whenever there's a fork in the road, go to God and say, which way do you want me to go? What do you want me to do next? And wait for his guidance. And so that's how I've navigated my career, my education, everything. And there's some takeaways that I've learned along the way. And I think, one of the things that I share with my students is get to know yourself. You should know what you're good at. What are your talents? What are your skills? What are your gifts? And what are you passionate about? And then make a little Venn diagram. So the overlapping circles, right? So you've got the one circle that has your skills and your talents and your gifts, and the other circle that overlaps with it that has your passions. And it's in the intersection of those two circles. That's your sweet spot. Look for the career path that satisfies both of those. Your things that you're good at and you're passionate about, because it's not a unified set, right? It's not two overlapping sets of all things that all of us have things that we're good at that we hate doing, and we also have things that we love doing that we're no good at. Right. So you want to find that sweet spot where our passions and skills overlap, and so that's honestly that's the best guidance that I can give to people that are still trying to figure those things out, along with asking God for guidance and being committed to following him through the doors that he opens for you.
Yeah, and I think that goes for anyone, not just the women
Absolutely.
who are watching, but for anyone really to stay focused there. But I like that you're focusing on women in particular to really encourage growth in these areas. Now, I do understand that you received a planning grant to work on the topic of encouraging women in science and faith. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm so grateful. Yes.
Now I see the passion.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a grant that I've actually been working on for about probably 4 years, and developing the idea. And so the grant is called Women in Science and Humanities, creating a mentoring community for women at the interface of science and religion. So I'm so excited about this because we're going to be able to explore women's experiences in this science and religion space, and ask them what their felt needs are. So we're going to meet with focus groups of women and have exploratory conversations with them to get at what their experience has been, what are their needs, what would they like to see in a mentoring community, and then actually develop a program around that to support women in that field and encourage young women to get into the field. So it's a very exciting undertaking, and I can't wait to really get it rolling.
So where can people go to find more information about this program?
Right. So I have a website that's called starrynights.me. I actually set up my own nonprofit called Starry Nights Incorporated, and the website for that again is starrynights.me. And you can find information there, as well as if you Google my name, Leslie Wickman, you can find all kinds of different resources, including ways to get in touch with me to talk about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So again, if you want to learn more about this program, go to starrynights.me.